After 15 years together, she came back from Miami different. Then I saw her phone. At 41, I believed I had figured out the equation of a good marriage. 15 years with the same woman, a modest 3-bedroom house in the suburbs of Columbus, 2 cars in the driveway, and enough stability to feel like we'd beaten the odds. My wife Rebecca and I weren't living some fairy tale, but we were solid, or at least that's what I told myself every morning when I left for my job as a regional sales manager. But the moment she returned from that girl's trip to Miami, something inside our home shifted in a way I couldn't immediately name, like the air pressure had changed, and I was the only one feeling it. She walked through the front door on a Tuesday evening, her suitcase wheels dragging across the hardwood floor, and when I hugged her, she felt different. Not physically, but energetically, like she was there, but also somewhere else entirely. Her smile was mechanical, practiced, and her eyes wouldn't quite meet mine. I told myself she was exhausted from traveling, that a week away with her college friends had simply worn her out. So I made her favorite pasta, poured her a glass of wine, and asked about the trip. She gave me surface-level answers, descriptions of beaches and restaurants that felt rehearsed, like she was reading from a script she'd memorized on the plane. Something felt different, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I kept waiting for her to relax back into the version of herself I knew, but that version never returned. The next evening, as we sat across from each other at our kitchen table, the one we'd picked out together at a Macy's clearance sale 7 years ago, she pushed her plate of chicken and rice away, barely touched. She folded her hands in front of her, took a breath that seemed to come from somewhere deep and painful, and finally looked at me. "Christopher," she said, and hearing my full name instead of Chris made my stomach drop. "I think we should just be friends." The words hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. At first, I genuinely laughed. I thought it was some bizarre joke, maybe something she'd picked up from a podcast or a self-help book she'd been reading. "Friends?" I repeated, shaking my head. "Rebecca, you're my wife. What are you talking about?" Her lips trembled for just a second before she forced them into a tight line and shrugged, a gesture so casual it felt like a slap. "That's exactly the problem, Chris. I don't feel like your wife anymore. I think I just need something different, something lighter." I felt my entire chest collapsing inward, like someone had reached inside and crushed my lungs with their bare hands. This was the same woman who had cried happy tears when I proposed to her on a rainy Saturday in October. The same woman who told me she couldn't imagine life without me. The same woman who whispered forever into my ear on our wedding night. And now she wanted to downgrade 15 years of marriage, 15 years of building a life together, into a casual friendship. I kept telling myself there had to be an explanation, something I was missing, some context that would make this make sense. So I asked her directly, my voice barely above a whisper, "Is there someone else?" She flinched. It was barely perceptible, just a small jerk of her shoulders, but I caught it. She shook her head quickly, too quickly, and said, "No, of course not. This is about us, about me needing space." But I had already seen the truth flash across her face like lightning illuminating a dark room for just a split second. She didn't need to say it. I already knew. The following days became a special kind of torture, the kind that happens in slow motion while you're powerless to stop it. Rebecca acted like she had done nothing wrong, like her little "let's be friends" speech was simply a mature, evolved way to end things between two adults. She started humming while she cooked breakfast, scrolling on her phone late into the night with a little smile playing at the corners of her mouth, giggling at messages she would immediately hide the second I walked into the room. It was like I had been replaced in my own house by a stranger who still wore my wife's face, who still slept in my bed, who still used the coffee maker I'd bought her for her birthday. And the worst part, the part that made me feel like I was losing my mind, was that she expected me to roll over and accept it. She wanted me to smile politely, agree to her new arrangement, shake hands like business partners dissolving a contract, and just keep existing in the background while she explored her different, lighter life. But deep inside, beneath the shock and the hurt and the crushing weight of betrayal, I was already forming my answer. One she would never see coming. One that would teach her that actions have consequences, and some doors, once closed, can never be opened again. The next 2 weeks became a cruel performance where I was both the audience and the unwilling actor. Rebecca floated around our house like she was free for the first time in years, like some invisible weight had been lifted from her shoulders, while I was left piecing together the broken, jagged edges of my own heart with trembling hands. She started dressing differently, tighter jeans, lower cut tops, bolder makeup, little touches she hadn't bothered with in months, maybe years. When I asked where she was going, she would flash me that new stranger smile and say, out with the girls, or just meeting some friends for drinks. But those friends never called our home phone. They never showed up at the door to pick her up. Instead, she was always slipping her phone into her back pocket the second I entered the room, her eyes darting like a guilty teenager caught sneaking out after curfew. I started paying attention to the small details, the way she angled her screen away from me, the way she'd suddenly remember she needed to take a call in the garage, the way her car smelled faintly of cologne that definitely wasn't mine. One night, as I sat on our couch pretending to watch a basketball game I couldn't focus on, she left her phone on the kitchen counter while she took a shower. The screen lit up with a message, and from where I was sitting, I could see the name at the top. Alex Work. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I stood up, walked over, and read the words that would burn themselves into my brain forever. Last night was absolutely unforgettable. Can't stop thinking about you. Can't wait for round 2 tomorrow. My hand shook as I carefully placed the phone back exactly where she'd left it, screen down, positioned at the same angle. I walked back to the couch, sat down, and stared at the television without seeing anything. In that moment, her entire "let's just be friends" speech finally crystallized into perfect, painful clarity. It wasn't about needing space. It wasn't about feeling disconnected. It wasn't about personal growth or finding herself or any of the other therapeutic buzzwords she'd thrown at me. It was about clearing her conscience. It was about making me the bad guy for not immediately agreeing to her terms, so she could run straight into someone else's arms completely guilt-free, with a clear narrative that she'd tried to end things much early and I'd been the difficult one. But here's what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have anticipated as she hummed her way through her mornings and disappeared into her evenings. While she was busy planning her grand escape, building her new life brick by brick right in front of me, I was quietly, carefully preparing mine. I started moving money from our joint checking account, small amounts at first, 300 here, 500 there, transferring it into a separate account I'd opened at a different bank across town, one she didn't know existed. I met with an old college friend who'd become a divorce attorney, bought him coffee at a Starbucks 30 minutes from our neighborhood, and explained everything. Her words, her behavior, the messages, the late nights, the way she'd checked out of our marriage while still sleeping in our bed. He leaned back in his chair, nodded slowly, and told me exactly what I needed to do if I wanted to walk away not just free, but with the upper hand. He explained the importance of documentation, of evidence, of building an airtight case before making any moves. So I hired a private investigator, a woman named Patricia who specialized in infidelity cases, and I gave her everything I knew. Rebecca's schedule, the name Alex, the hotel she'd mentioned casually once in passing, thinking I wasn't paying attention. Meanwhile, I played my role with an actor's precision. I smiled when she walked in late smelling like wine and someone else's cologne. I nodded sympathetically when she claimed she was exhausted from another girl's night out. I even told her once, my voice carefully measured and calm. You know what, Rebecca? Maybe you're right. Maybe we should just be friends. And for the first time in weeks, I saw her entire body relax. Her shoulders dropped, her face softened, and she actually reached across the table and squeezed my hand, relief flooding her eyes. She thought she had me exactly where she wanted me, compliant and defeated, ready to fade quietly into the background of her exciting new chapter. But I wasn't broken. I wasn't defeated. I was waiting, patient as a hunter in a blind, waiting for the perfect moment to show her that while she thought she was rewriting the rules of our marriage, I was the one rewriting the ending. And my ending was going to be very, very different from the one she'd imagined. Patricia worked fast. Within 10 days, she'd compiled a file that was both comprehensive and devastating. Photographs of Rebecca and Alex, a software engineer she'd met at some work conference 8 months ago, entering and leaving a Hampton Inn on 3 separate occasions. Detailed timestamps of their text messages, which I'd given her access to through our shared phone plan. Bank statements showing charges at restaurants and bars I'd never been to on nights she'd claimed to be with her girlfriends. Credit card receipts for lingerie purchases from Victoria's Secret that I'd certainly never seen her wear. She had been meticulous in her deception, but not quite meticulous enough. Every lie, every deflection, every "I'm just tired" and "you're being paranoid" was now documented in black and white, ready to be presented not just to her, but to a judge if necessary. My lawyer drafted divorce papers, front-loaded with evidence, and explained to me exactly how Ohio's laws worked regarding infidelity and asset division. The house was in both our names, but I'd made the down payment from my savings before we married. The cars were separate. Our retirement accounts were our own. With the evidence we had, he assured me I'd walk away with significantly more than half. All I had to do was wait for the right moment to strike. That moment came on a Thursday night, 3 weeks after her Miami trip, 3 weeks after her "let's be friends" speech, 3 weeks of watching her live a double life under my own roof. She walked in just past midnight, her hair messy in that specific way that told me exactly what she'd been doing, her perfume heavy and mixed with the scent of someone else. She didn't bother with excuses anymore. She didn't even look guilty. She just smirked, kicked off her heels by the door, and said with a casual wave of her hand, "Don't wait up next time, Christopher. We're just friends now, remember?" The words were meant to cut me, meant to establish her dominance in this new dynamic she'd created. But instead, they gave me the opening I'd been waiting for. I nodded calmly, stood up from the couch where I'd been sitting in the dark, walked over to the drawer where I'd been hiding my ammunition, and pulled out a thick manila envelope. I placed it on the kitchen table between us with a soft thud that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. "What's this?" she asked, her smirk fading, a tiny wrinkle of confusion appearing between her eyebrows. "Your freedom," I replied, my voice steady and cold as winter steel. Inside that envelope was everything, neatly organized, tabbed, and labeled like a prosecutor's case file. The divorce papers, already signed on my end, just waiting for her signature. Screenshots of every message between her and Alex, printed in full color, their words of passion and planning laid bare. Bank records showing her secret hotel bookings, itemized down to the room service charges. Photographs that Patricia had taken, date and time stamped, showing Rebecca and Alex holding hands, kissing in a parking lot, entering hotel rooms together. I had documented everything, every lie, every betrayal, every moment she thought I was too stupid or too trusting to notice. Her face went absolutely white, all the blood draining away until she looked like she might faint. Her hands trembled as she picked up the papers, flipping through page after page, her eyes getting wider with each new piece of evidence. "You went behind my back," she stammered, her voice cracking like thin ice. "You spied on me. You invaded my privacy." I actually laughed then, a bitter, hollow sound that surprised even me. "Behind your back?" I repeated, shaking my head slowly. "Rebecca, you absolutely shattered our marriage behind mine. You built an entire second life while I was sleeping next to you every night. I didn't invade anything. I just decided to stop playing the fool you needed me to be." She tried to recover, tried to find some angle, some defense that would shift the narrative back in her favor. "Chris, wait," she said, reaching across the table with trembling hands, her eyes suddenly wet with tears that I no longer believed were real. "It's not what it looks like. Alex means nothing to me. I was just lonely, confused. After the trip, I realized I made a terrible mistake. We can fix this. We can go to therapy. Please don't do this." I held up my hand, cutting her off mid-sentence, and for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt truly powerful. "Save it," I said quietly. "You wanted to be friends, Rebecca? Fine. Friends don't share beds. Friends don't make vows in front of family and God. Friends don't build futures together, don't buy houses together, don't promise forever, and then throw it away for some guy you met at a conference. You lost the right to call yourself my wife the exact moment you decided someone else was worth more than everything we built. And you know what the really beautiful part is? You don't even get to play the victim here. You did this. You chose this. And now you get to live with the consequences." For the first time, I saw real panic flood into her eyes. Not the crocodile tears, not the manipulative sadness, but genuine, raw panic. She lunged forward, grabbing my arm with both hands, her voice rising to something close to a scream. "Please, Christopher, please. Don't do this. I love you. I've always loved you. It was just a stupid mistake. We can fix this. I'll do anything." But it was already too late. The door she'd opened 3 weeks ago with her "let's be friends" speech, the door she'd walked through so confidently into Alex's arms, had closed and locked behind her. There was no going back, no undoing, no reset button that would return us to who we'd been. "I'm done, Rebecca," I said, gently but firmly pulling my arm from her grasp. "You wanted out, and now you have it. The only difference is, you don't get to write the ending. You don't get to walk away with everything while I sit here broken and grateful for whatever scraps you leave me. The house stays with me. I made the down payment. The joint savings account has already been divided according to what we each contributed. Even your car, the Honda Accord you're so proud of, that's coming out of your half of the settlement because I'm keeping my truck. You traded all of this, all of us, for your little adventure with Alex. I really, genuinely hope it was worth it." Her scream echoed through every room of our house, a sound that was equal parts rage and regret, denial and devastation. She crumpled onto the kitchen floor, sobbing in a way I'd never seen her sob before, not even when her father died, not even on the worst days of our marriage. But I didn't stay to watch. I grabbed my keys, walked out the front door, and drove to a hotel I'd already booked for the next 3 nights while the legal process began. As I sat in that generic room with its generic furniture and its smell of industrial cleaner, I realized something that felt almost spiritual in its clarity. Sometimes the best revenge isn't shouting or fighting or begging someone to see your worth. Sometimes the best revenge is simply smiling as you close the door, taking back your power, and letting the person who betrayed you drown in the mess they created all by themselves. They wanted freedom, and you gave it to them. They just didn't realize that freedom comes with a price, and sometimes that price is everything they thought they'd keep. And as I lay in that hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not happiness, not yet, but something better. Peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you didn't let someone make you small, that you didn't accept less than you deserved, that you stood up and said enough. And that, I realized as sleep finally found me, was worth more than any marriage that required me to betray myself just to keep it alive.